Welcome to another Sad Boys book review. My name is Dusty, and today I'll be reviewing Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, the first novel in the Throne of Glass series, and the second one I'm covering here. If you didn't hear my review of the short story collection, The Assassin's Blade, that I did last year, you can check that out if you'd like. It's an hour of me talking about how terrible the book is, and I'll go ahead and say that I might have been a little too harsh on the book, at least in terms of like in a review format. I certainly wasn't intending on it to be a complete and total shit on it fest, and it did kind of come across as that. I'm sure, probably, maybe, I don't know. I didn't like it. I'm not changing my opinions or my views on it. They're still the same. I still think it was not a good set of stories. But I am going to try and not be so negative, or I guess so exclamatory, inflammatory, whatever terms you want to use. I'm going to try and keep it at least a little more even-tempered, and trying to be professional at the same time, as unprofessional as I am in general, for Throne of Glass, because, you know, it's... out of respect for Sarah J. Maas, because at the end of the day, she published these books, she wrote these books, she put effort into them, and regardless of how I feel about it, she still published these books. She still got them published. She has sold millions of copies, and that's way more than I can say. So respect where it is due to Sarah J. Maas. I will say, like, I don't remember if I said this in the review, but respect where it's due. She did put in the work. She did get them published at the end of the day, and she is a successful author. So with that out of the way, Throne of Glass. I like this book more than The Assassin's Blade, and I'm sure it's partially because it is a complete package instead of a collection of short stories, or novellas, depending on your point of view. I think that some of them might fall under novellas for The Assassin's Blade, but that's not the point. I did like it better, but not by a huge amount. I think it was more competently written, but not by a huge amount. I think the plot was more interesting, but not by a huge amount. I'm sure you're noticing a trend here. The thing about it is, I can definitely see her improvement as an author from The Assassin's Blade to this, which the short stories, the collection The Assassin's Blade, while it was released much later than the Throne of Glass novel, the short stories themselves were published before the release of Throne of Glass, either through like ebooks or through her website or whatever. I don't know the specifics, but they were technically written and released before Throne of Glass. So even though the Assassin's Blade collection was released later, the stories themselves were released first. So you can see her growth as an author, though once again, believe it or not by much. The thing about this book is it was juggling a couple of storylines that do interact with each other. It is one general story, but there's a lot of sub-stories being told in it. And the thing is depending on your point of view, what you might call the A-plot and the B-plot, I feel like the A-plot was the competition. So just to get the premise out of the way, the premise is Selena has been in the prison place, the pit, I forgot what it was called, the prison pit place that she was placed in. She's been in there for a year, and she has been taken by the Crown Prince, Dorian, to be his champion in a competition that his father, the king, who, if we remember from Assassin's Blade, yes, spoilers for Assassin's Blade, by the way, is the one that is responsible for her being put in that mine prison in the first place. His competition for who is going to be his champion, which is basically his personal assassin. So Prince Dorian, his son, has chosen Selena to be his champion in this competition. I feel like I'm going to have to do a little bit of spoilers for this, because I can't really get my full opinions out without spoiling the book. So when the time comes, I will let you know when I'm getting into spoiler territory, but I feel like I just kind of have to. I don't think I can avoid it. So that's the general premise. She is part of this competition where she's competing to become the king's champion, which is his personal private assassin. And it's not a death competition. At least it's not supposed to be. If you don't win, you are eliminated, but you're just sent back to wherever it was you came from, which in her case would be the mine prison place that she was in for a year. However, some of the different champions have been found dead, and so there is a murderer afoot, and so there is a mystery involved. So I would consider that the A plot. The B plot I would consider to be her relationship between the characters, both Dorian and Cale Westfall, who is the captain of the guard. Believe it or not, there is a bit of a love triangle between the three of them. I know, crazy, right? In these romance fantasy novels. But then there's also her relationship with Nehemia. I think I'm saying that right, Nehemia, who is a foreign dignitary, for lack of a better term. So, yeah, I would say the B plot would be her relationship with the characters in the novel. I was much more interested in the B plot, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm not going to sit there and say it was fantastic literature and so well written and, blah, blah, blah. But I do think it was the better of the two storylines. The A plot with the competition and the murder mystery, I found it boring, if I'm being perfectly honest. I didn't care. I didn't care about the competition. I didn't care about any of the competitors. I didn't care about the villain. It didn't matter to me. It just, every time it would go to that, I would just be like, man, I would honestly rather just have her focus on continuing developing these characters that she's clearly trying to develop. It's not like there's not effort going into it. I just would rather be reading that instead. I didn't think the competition storyline was very good. I think it fell flat. I don't think it was really well done. I just didn't care, personally. And that's a problem when you can't hook someone in. And granted, I can only speak for myself subjectively. I know a lot of people love this book and love this series. But if you can't get someone hooked into your A plot, at least as I see it, the A plot, then there's a problem there. But at the end of the day, I don't think the A plot, having not read any more of the series yet up to the point of recording this, I don't know anything that happens after this, but I don't think that plot line with the competition is going to have a huge amount of bearing over the rest of the series. Obviously, like how the competition concludes will, but the other pieces of it, I don't really see it being a major factor moving forward in the series. So it just, I don't know. Like I said, it fell flat. It fell very flat to me. But I can't really explain why without going into spoilers. So here's your spoiler warning for Throne of Glass. So the candidate Cain, midway through the book, we find him doing some shady shit, and it's like, oh, so he's the villain. And then Sarah tries really hard to throw this misdirection about Nehemia, like, oh, maybe Nehemia is actually the villain, and it's very obvious that she's not at all. She's just Selena's friend, and also kind of a victim of the situation as well. And then when it comes about, oh no, Nehemia actually isn't the villain, and she's also helping Selena, and Cain is the villain. It's like, yeah, you told me that like 200 pages ago. And then you try and tell me that that's not the case, but then it turns out that it actually is the case. It was an attempt at a twist and like a bait and switch, and it's just it wasn't very good. Like it was super obvious. It didn't build to anything other than just a oh gotcha moment. But you can't get me if you can't weakly build the facade in the first place. It was just very obvious that Cain is the villain, and then whoa, shocker, Cain is the villain, and everything that you thought that he was doing, and everything that you were shown to make you think that he was doing that was him doing that. It was super obvious, partially because, once again, Sarah told you that this is what it was, but then tried to trick you into thinking it's not what it was. And it was weird and it was pointless, and I just didn't understand why she spent the time trying to build that twist that didn't even do anything. But anyways, yeah, Cain's the one that's been murdering everybody. The finals of the competition is Cain and Selena fighting one-on-one, and she gets poisoned, so she's weakened, but she still wins anyways because of, the power of God and anime on her side. And Cain tries to kill her which is against the rules, even though the king was totally going to let him kill her before, when he was killing her before she got magic unlock, win button, press, yay. And so then Kale kills him, which is, like, I guess kind of against the rules, but she technically already won at that point, so is but then, like, we learn that the king wanted Cain to win. But the king is the one that set up the competition in the first place. Like, he had the whole thing set up so that Cain would win in the end, but Selena had to go and just ruin those plans. But then it's like, why did you have this competition in the first place when you already knew who you wanted to be your champion? You could have just been like, I want this guy to be my champion, and you're the king. You are literally the king. You can make these decisions. You made this competition. Why? Why did you make the competition in the first place if you already knew who you wanted to be your champion? And even if you didn't know who you wanted to be your champion, but then later on you're like, that Cain guy, I think he's the best choice. Just cancel the competition and pick Cain anyways. You're the king. What is going to be done about it? Like, but I don't think that was the case. I think it was just he wanted him, but then had this competition for some reason. But the fact that he allowed Selena to have the option to ruin his plans when he didn't even need to have the plans in the first place to get what he wanted is just mind-bogglingly stupid. This king is stupid. He's an idiot. I don't understand why this competition existed in the first place. It purely exists to get Selena where she needs to be moving forward. And you could have done that in a much better way. The one thing you could change to make this, like, not even an issue in the first place is not make the king want Cain to be his champion. Plain and simple. Just take out the king being like, I really wanted him to win. Then suddenly this problem doesn't exist. Him just be like, I didn't really care who was going to win. I didn't want her, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Like, that would have been better than him being like, I really wanted him to win. Oops, I was powerless to stop this. I don't know. It's just such a weird decision. I don't understand why it was written like this. It completely... Like I said, I thought the whole competition thing was boring, and it didn't hook me, and it didn't really amount to much other than... Because you know from the get-go that it's going to end up being Cain versus Selena. As soon as Cain is introduced, you know it's going to be the two of them in the finals. Like, so everything else is just... And knowing that is not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily make everything up in between that point, leading up to that point, pointless. But it does when you don't do it well. When the execution isn't well, and I'm just left sitting there being bored every time I'm having to deal with anything to do with this competition, it makes that competition pointless, because we already know how it's going to end, or at least how the finale is going to at least be set up. And realistically, Selena was probably always going... You could probably assume she was going to win. She won. Woo. But I don't know. It's just... I didn't like the plot thread, period. I didn't think it was very good. I thought that the character building was better, but at the end of the day, it's still just another weird kind of love triangle plot line that doesn't really... Obviously, she feels one way, and the two other guys feel one way, and I feel like it has about as much weight as the Edward, Bella, Jacob triangle, which is to say, not a lot. As much as people wanted her to get with Jacob, it was never going to happen. She was always going to end up with Edward. Anyone that wanted her to get with Jacob was just wishing that Stephenie Meyer would not do what she was obviously going to do. And I feel like this is a similar thing to where, once again, I haven't read past this, but it's pretty obvious that, at least as far as I can tell, that she's going to want to get with Dorian, not Kale. But who knows? Who knows? I guess I'll see if I read any more of this. But end of spoilers. So to wrap this up, I liked it more than The Assassin's Blade. I thought it was marginally better written than The Assassin's Blade. And I know my wife has told me, and I've seen in other online discourses, that generally speaking, The Assassin's Blade and Throne of Glass are considered depending on who you ask, the worst books in the series, and it really is only uphill from here. And I can't really say I liked either, so I can't guarantee that I'm going to like the rest of the series, but it's one reason why I have given at least these first two books the benefit of the doubt enough to where I'm like, okay, I will read the next one, which I think is called Heir of Fire. I think that's the second one, or it's either that or I don't think it's Crown of Midnight. I don't know. I know the names of the books, but I don't remember the order. I think Heir of Fire is the second one. I don't know. I'll read it. I'll give that one another go. I'll probably read all 7 books in the series because I don't like leaving things unfinished. But I can't guarantee I'm going to like it, especially going off of this book here and even the Assassin's Blade. But I'm okay with completely throwing out the Assassin's Blade and looking purely just at Throne of Glass. And even then, I don't know. We'll see. I didn't much like this book. I didn't hate it like I hated the Assassin's Blade, but I didn't really like it either. So with that in mind, I'm giving Throne of Glass a 5 out of 10. It's, I guess, as middle of the road as you can be for me. Like I said, I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it either. It's a 5 out of 10 average. Didn't really do anything to really piss me off, and didn't really do anything to make me go, wow, that was cool at the same time. So just very average, middle of the road, boring at times, okay at others. I don't regret reading it. I don't feel like I wasted my time like I did with something like Assassin's Blade. And yeah, I guess if this trajectory continues, then I might actually find myself liking parts of the series. We'll see, I guess. But that'll do it for Throne of Glass. I don't know, read it if you like fantasy romance. Granted, I'm not the biggest fantasy romance fan in general, but I don't know. This I don't think I need to really recommend this book to anybody because this series is already extremely popular as it is. I feel like if you already know about it, you know whether or not you're going to like it. I personally didn't like this one. I guess we'll see how I feel about the second one whenever it is I finally get to it. But that'll do it for the Sad Boys book review. Thank you everybody for listening, and I will see you next time. Take care.